In this video, I'll be using a pattern template from my Procreate Pattern Layout Kit to create a seamless scallop pattern in Procreate. Hi, I'm Mel Armstrong, a surface pattern designer and illustrator from Wellington, New Zealand, and on this channel I provide tutorials and advice for illustrators and surface pattern designers. Okay, so I'm going to create a canvas size that is 3,600 pixels by 3,600 pixels. That is a 12 by 12 inch. Sometimes I'll create a 3,000 by 3,000, which is a 10 by 10 inch if you're using the 300 dpi. So I'm going to create that. And then if I go to my pattern templates library, I am going to select this one here, the scallops. And generally, if I just pick a darker grey, it doesn't really matter what colour, it's just that one seems to work well when you reduce the opacity, and then just tap in the middle. And then if I hit the move tool here and then say fit to canvas, that will just bump it out so that it fits nicely within your canvas, and it's going to make it repeat nicely later on. I would then lower the opacity and lock it, and then create another layer which I'll put below it, and that is where you start sketching. So you can sketch your design within these scallops, and what I like to do with the scallop design is create different elements in each of the scallops that will then get repeated around. So another option you can use from my pattern library is, so let's unlock that one and I will clear it. I also have some layout examples that you can follow to create a pattern, and they are just to be used as a guide to help you create something that's well balanced and laid out well. But absolutely use it as a guide and then create your own design from it. So I'm going to use this one here, and we'll expand that to fit the canvas as well, and just lower the opacity a little bit more and then hit the lock just so that we don't accidentally bump it. And then on that layer below is where we will start sketching. I might actually just change the blending mode here to multiply. That just allows whatever you sketch underneath it to come through it better. But that's optional, you don't have to do that. I just find it's easier then to see the sketch. So then I'm just going to create a sketch of my design using the 6B pencil which comes with Procreate. And I'm going to use my layout guide as a guide to where I'm going to put my flowers. So I will probably just speed this up while I'm sketching out my idea, and I will see you at the end of my sketch. Okay, so my sketch is finished. It's very rough, but I will bring it together in the next step where I add some colour. So before I add the colour, I do want to test and make sure this is going to work nicely as a repeat. So to do that, I'm going to turn off the background layer and I'm going to duplicate that sketch layer. And then with that one, I'm going to put a little mark in the top right hand corner and the bottom left hand corner. And then let's duplicate that one by swiping left and then clicking on duplicate. And we want 4 copies. So we've got 4 copies plus the original copy that doesn't have the marks. So let's keep that top one selected and select the Move tool, turn on Snapping and Magnetics, and then you want to just drag it to the top until it snaps and you can see the orange line. And sometimes it can be a bit tricky, and then move it over to the left. And you can see there it lines up nicely. And then let's do the top right. And then the bottom left, and then the bottom right. And then if we merge those 4 layers together, you can just pinch them and that will merge them. And if you turn off the original layer, you can see you've got the marks there in the middle, so we can just erase those. And I probably need a better eraser than that. Let's try this one. That's better. And then turn that original layer back on. And how about we turn the background layer on too? So now we can see that that middle section, the tile, is going to repeat nicely in the 4 quadrants. So I'm happy with that. I can't see any overlaps. This particular layout, the scallops, if you stay within those lines, the scallops, then you're going to know for sure that it's going to repeat nicely. So let's move on to the colouring. Some of my other layouts, they do have things that go outside the edge, and so you need to really do this testing to make sure that it all fits nicely together, and sometimes you have to go back and have a little play and then continue on. So I'm going to get rid of those outer layers. We don't really need them anymore. It was just for a test. And then I'm going to change the blend mode to multiple for my sketch layer and bump that down, create a new layer and place that below. And this is where I can start creating my coloured layer, and this will actually end up being multiple layers. In the end you'll want to group them all together to keep them nice, but I'm going to now go ahead and colour this and we'll see what it looks like at the end. And the brushes I'm using for this particular design are just going to be the brushes that are native to Procreate, and I will pop them up on the screen or pop them in the link, the description below, so that you can see what brushes I'm using. I'm just going to start with the Monoline brush. And a really quick way to colour is just to drag the colour into one of them, then click on Continue Filling, and then just tap in each of those flowers to colour them all. Now I'm just going to turn the sketch off and jump in and add a little bit more detail. I'm just going to clip a layer to my flower petals, and I'm going to add a little bit of texture to them. I'm going to use the Inka brush, which is also a Procreate brush. Be a little bit less than that. And now I need some texture on my leaves. Let's move on to another flower. I'm just going to group all of those first and then continue on with my other flowers. Okay, so I finished my coloured layers, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to group them all together. So I've actually got 4 groups here which are each in my flowers, and I'm just going to select them all and hit the group, and they are now all in a group. And now I'm going to turn off the background layer. So what I want to do is I want to test that this is working and move these all to the quadrants, and that will create our repeating tile. So I'm going to turn off the background layer. And then I'm going to use 3 fingers to swipe down and then select copy all, or you can go up to the wrench here and then go to add and then copy canvas, which does the same. And then if we do 3 fingers to swipe down and then click paste, that has pasted a merged layer here. So that is basically all of these group layers merged into one. And then I want to add a little mark in the top right hand corner and then in the bottom left hand corner. So what that does is that when I go to select it, you can see that it selects the whole canvas, whereas if I didn't have those marks, so let's just go back and then I selected it, you can see here it only selects the flowers, but we want the whole canvas so that it goes into the corners correctly. So I will add those marks in again. And then I want to create some copies of this. So I'm going to duplicate it so that I have 4 copies, and then I've still got my original, which can be the one in the middle. So I'm going to move this top one into the left top up here, so I can turn the background back on again to make it a bit easier. And then I'm going to move it up till it snaps with the orange line. So you need an orange line going horizontally and an orange line going vertically, and then move that across to get those orange lines again. Sometimes it snaps nicely, sometimes it doesn't, and then you have to try it again. Just persevere and try a couple of times if you have to. So I'm going to the next layer now, and I'm going to do the same into the top right hand corner. Now you do have to make sure that your snapping is on, so let me just snap that in. There it is. And for it to work properly, you need snapping and magnetics turned on. And then let's do the bottom too. And then the bottom right. Okay, and now if we just turn off that bottom grouped layer, you can see we've got the marks here. So what I'm going to do is merge those 4 corner ones and then remove the marks in the center by just using the eraser tool. And then we can turn on that top layer. And then that there is our repeating tile that looks pretty good at the moment, but I do want to add a different color background and I want to add some texture. And I'm also thinking I'm going to outline the scalloped area. Now with the scallops, if I do the outlines of them, I could have done that before I did the repeats around, but I'm going to do it this way so that I don't double up on those bits that join. So that middle bit joins onto that top bit, and I don't want the edges to double up. You'll see what I mean soon, hopefully. But first let's add a background layer. So I'm going to add another layer and just drag it to the bottom, and then drag on a color for the background. And then I'm actually going to add a texture layer on top. So I've created another layer and I'm going to select a white color. And then in my pattern templates library, down the bottom there is a linen texture. And this is a repeating linen texture that will work well with anything up to 3600 pixels by 3600 pixels. So it needs to be a square, but anything under that, so anything under 12 by 12 inches, it will work on, as long as it's to the edge of your canvas. So I'm just going to click on that and then snap it on. And then I want to change the blending mode to something a bit lighter, so maybe a soft light or an overlay. Let's go with a soft light, and then we can just bump it down. So the texture is very subtle, so if I zoom in you can see it there. I could even bump it down a little bit more, just so it's very subtle. And then I am going to turn on my guide again and create another layer. I've got a blank layer here. Select a dark color. And I am going to start using my Monoline brush just to do some little outlines to the scallops. Okay, so now let's turn that off. We just need to remove a couple of these dots that don't work. So that is my final repeating tile, and I want to test that at a smaller scale. So I'm going to group all of these together. I'm then going to copy the whole canvas, so either the 3-finger to swipe down and copy all, or you go to the actions, add, and then copy canvas. And then 3 fingers to paste it. So now we have a merged copy of all those groups, so I can turn those ones off now. And I'm going to duplicate that so I have 4 copies. And what we want to do is reduce each of these layers to the 4 quadrants. So there's a couple of ways to do that. So we can just select it with our move tool there, and then using the blue dot, just click with your Apple Pencil and drag, making sure you've got snapping on, and it should snap to the quarter size, which is 1800 by 1800 pixels, and then just release it. And another way to do that is if we select the next one here, if you want it to snap into that corner, you click on that dot there, and then you can type in the dimensions manually like that. Make sure you've got the little lock, and then it will just jump in there like that. So that's another nice way. And you can see now there is no overlapping, it's all repeating nicely. So I'm just going to repeat for the other two. And we can merge those as well, and that can be one scale, a smaller scale, and then if I turn that off, we turn on that one there, we can group those ones together. That can be our large scale. And then you can export this as a JPEG or a PNG and license it out, or you can upload it to a Spoonflower shop or another print-on-demand shop that is now a fully repeating tile. So I hope you enjoyed that, and let me know in the comments if you do have any questions. Otherwise, go check out my brush pack. There are heaps more layouts that you can use, plus the templates here as well. We've got diamonds, Persians, peacocks, OGs, scallops, mushroom and circular radial templates, and then I've created some examples. There's also a PDF that you can download that takes you through how to use all of these as well. So be sure to do that. I will leave the link in the description below, and I will see you next time.